Right, from a point of agreement, let's get just a little bit dangerous. We've mentioned corruption. We're not going to get through the evening without talking about it a little bit. There's Navan here to ask his question, please. Thank you very much. I will direct this to Mr. Mafamboti to start and then go through again.
Good evening to the delegates. With regard to the textbook saga in the Popo, is this sort of incident an example of inefficiency or corrupt system? How does your party plan to prevent this situation from being repeated?
Well, we agree. We're in agreement with the young man. It was a national embarrassment, the whole question of textbooks. The question of corruption in South Africa, and I want to go back to this whole issue, it's not the ANC that is corrupt. I mean, people need to understand this in context. The ANC is a microcosm of society. It is a mirror image in other English. It's a mirror image of society, basically. If this corruption that you see in the ANC, the corruption that is there in our communities, that is why he was talking about the people, probably who are not in the ANC, who are providing food to our kids, who are really not doing what they're supposed to do. We need to deal with the systemic issue that underpins cronyism in South Africa. And that is dealing with the socio-economic question in the country, that is dealing with the socio-economic system of the country. So yes, what we are going to do to ensure, we have ensured now, this year, after the textbook saga in Limpopo that year, was 2011, we have improved textbook delivery in the country. But we're going beyond that. We're saying, what's the use of giving textbooks? We want to give, in our manifesto we say, we're going to give children tablets, so that they've got textbooks on their tablets, they've got better teacher resources. So you don't have to have the system of privatizing textbook delivery, giving it to companies to provide. And that's a problem, that's a crisis. Also have improve our own capacity within the state to do some of the things that we do privatize and give to the private sector. Because central to the question of textbooks in Limpopo was the whole question around the company that was involved, the private sector, which was not really what was putting profits before the national interest, which is education, which is our children. And that is a crisis that we have in South Africa because everybody, because of the fact that, and by the way, it's not true that the ANC is in bed with the private sector, it's probably the DA which is in bed with the private sector, because the private sector in the main in South Africa remains untransformed. And they have been able to contain resources amongst a few, and unfortunately I have to say, a few white elites in South Africa. And the reality is that then the other masses in South Africa want to scramble for this small piece of the cake. And that's a crisis. That's a crisis. That really reproduces the greed that is there because everybody wants to run for these scarce resources that are there in our society. So I think that's we need to deal with it much more systematically. But going forward, we have been able to deliver textbooks satisfactorily. In fact, we have been able to deliver 100% of our textbooks in most of the provinces. And there are challenges there and there. And the whole issue is how schools really do give feedback to government and the whole bureaucratic nature in which government does these things. So when we introduce tablets, we believe we have been able to deal with this issue once and for all. We don't need textbooks. We need our kids to be able to have adequate teaching and learning resources. That's why I want to give them tablets over the next 5 years.
Why are you shaking your head? Why are you shaking your head?
Because everything my colleague has said is just a fallacy and it's funny. The fact of the matter is the ANC is corrupt, and whether you decide that's individuals or the party, the fact of the matter is the individuals that are in your party that you have mandated to make sure that textbooks arrive on time, we're not able to do so because they're found to have been having a corrupt relationship with those very private sector people that you want to take out. So it's not about the private sector, it's about the corruption and the corrupt nature that the ANC governments that have been given the mandates and the power to make these deals happen actually corrupt people. And I don't really care about whether a private person decided to not deliver the books. The fact of the matter is your job as a government to make sure that those books are delivered. And if you can't do it because you're having corrupt tendencies with them, then that means that your government and the people that you employ are corrupt. So let's not run away from that, first of all. Secondly, the DA has already established a system of being able to give tablets to children, so well done for getting on board with that. And the fact of the matter is that everywhere where we govern in the Western Cape, we were able to give textbooks to every single school, every single learner, on time, every single year, unlike the ANC. And if you're saying that you have problems here and there, we're very happy to take over the government and show you how it should be done. Then the other thing that you talk about is the fact that, sometimes books come, sometimes books don't come. Again, I don't understand how you can run away from that, because whereas whether or not it's a problem that happens, it's the fact that your ANC government's not able to deliver them. And you haven't delivered them 100% since 2010, because just this year, the DA uncovered a warehouse where books were stacked and still weren't being delivered, and then some of them were being thrown in the river. So it's a complete lie to say that you've been able to do that, when we know, and I was there, and we found those books, the students are still sitting in the purple classrooms without those textbooks. As for us in the Western Cape, as I said, we've been able to do that, and we've been able to do it because when we give those government tenders, when we get suppliers to do that, we have an open process where everyone can cut in tender full of books, and then we make sure that we get the right people and we hold them to account. And if they don't do it, then obviously there are repercussions, which we never see from the ANC, no matter how much their people might screw up. We never see or hear that somebody has been fired or that somebody is being held accountable. And that's the difference about how we would be able to make sure that we were able to get the books out to them.
That's the story of the southern suburbs in Cape Town. It's not the story of the people who are really having challenges in the rural areas.
There are no facts to back that up, because you're the ones who made that report that says that we've been able to do that, and we can back it up with showing in our schools that this has happened. Whereas in the ANC, as you say, not even all provinces you're able to do that. So we're not going to argue that it's just the fact of the matter is we deliver things on time. You do not, because you have
We've reached an impasse here, so I'm going to take the discussion forward again. The audience wasn't following the basis. There's corruption in the private sector or in the government, or both. We're not going to agree. Lenny, I'm going to ask you to take us forward, perhaps by talking about your own experience. Do your teachers in your community come to work every day?
Yeah, first of all, I just want to say, I mean, if anybody is going to stand up in front of an educated, literal audience and claim that the ANC is not corrupt, that statement needs to be followed by an apology. And an apology to our people, because the corruption is quite scary. It was Kalema Mashanti in 2007 who said that corruption is eating away at the ANC. And it is true. And we said from top to bottom, because number one, we can't divorce corruption away from number one and number two. Whenever people think of number one and number two, they think of Nkandla and Marikana, and that's all you can think of. So the corruption is scary, and all the way to the bottom, to a mayor's wife that I know personally that sold ID books to foreigners and still kept the job and is still working today. Nothing was done. It was on the front page of a newspaper with my name on the bottom. Not one ANC official even bothered to question it. Nothing was done. She still works, and I still smile. That is to the person. But corruption is scary, and it is destroying our education system. And also I want to add is that I agree with you on one thing, is that the Upper State government did provide a really good story for white people. That is true. What the ANC government is doing is providing a good story for whom, I would like to ask you. Which racial group is it providing a good story for? Which class of people is it providing a good story for, if any?
A very quick response, and I really would like to move out of here.
Yeah.
Quick response.
No, we want to provide a better South Africa for all South Africans. Because when we said, when we adopted the Freedom Charter, we said South Africa belongs to all who live in it, black and white. And our focus, the focus of our policies, is to ensure that we elevate the working class and the poor. And that's a sensible thing to do, regardless of their race. Let us uplift the working class and poor. And let me just say this on the question of apology. I do not say the ANC is not corrupt, or there is no corruption in the ANC. I said the ANC as an organization is not corrupt, but there's corruption in the ANC, which is a mirror image. I even use the word, it's a microcosm of the corruption that is in the society, the ills that we have in society. So it's an admission that we in the ANC, is correct to point out to even Gwede Mantashe at the past conference exposed this corruption that we have within our structures and within government, and we want to deal with it.
Thank you. As I said, I'm not considering this issue closed, but we're not going to find agreement, so let's move on.